What if a single act of kindness on a cold Christmas morning could completely change the course of your life? What if the stranger you helped turned out to be someone powerful enough to change your fate forever? This is a story about giving without expecting, about struggle, about hope, and about the kind of comeback that no one saw coming. Welcome to Comeback Tales, where real strength shows up in the quietest moments. On a peaceful Christmas morning in the small town of Willow Creek, a young woman named Lena was awake before the sun. She had started her day with a quiet prayer inside the old stone chapel at the heart of town. Though life had been anything but easy lately, Lena had always carried herself with quiet resilience. She wasn't rich, but her heart was full of compassion. She prayed not just for herself, but for peace, for kindness, and for the strength to keep going. As the final words of her prayer faded into the stillness of the church, Lena stood and adjusted her coat, her breath forming soft clouds in the cold air. Her stomach fluttered with a small sense of excitement. Today, for the first time in months, she had planned a special treat for herself. A Christmas meal at Alfonso's Bistro, a cozy Italian place down the road. To most people, it might seem like a small indulgence. But for Lena, it had taken weeks of saving. She'd skipped coffees, walked instead of taking the bus, and passed up every temptation to ensure she could afford this one evening of warmth and comfort. It wasn't just about the food. It was about celebrating a tiny victory in a year that had tried to break her. As she stepped out of the church, the world outside was quiet and coated in a delicate frost. She made her way toward the street, but something in the corner of her vision made her slow her steps. Just beyond the steps of the chapel, tucked into a quiet bench beneath a bare tree, sat an elderly man. His posture was hunched, his coat too thin for the weather, and his head bowed low. At first, she thought he was just resting, but then she saw it, a glint of light catching on his cheek. He was crying. Lena hesitated. She had her plans, her one moment of joy for the day, but something in her heart tugged. She walked over and said softly, "Excuse me, sir. Are you all right?" The man looked up, startled, as if he hadn't expected anyone to speak to him. He wiped at his face quickly and forced a fragile smile. "It's nothing, just memories." Lena sat down, leaving enough space to not crowd him. "Sometimes it helps to talk," she said. The man sighed, then finally spoke. "I want to see my son today, to meet my grandson for the first time. But they told me they had other plans. Said it wasn't a good time." His voice cracked, and he looked away. "I don't know why I came here. Maybe I just didn't want to be alone." Lena's heart ached. She looked at the man, then down at her purse. Her saved-up money. Her special meal. She stood. "Wait here," she said gently. "I'll be right back." He looked up in confusion, but she was already walking. Down the block, she found a small bakery, still open. With careful consideration, she bought a warm croissant and a cup of coffee. As she reached the register, a display of Christmas cards caught her eye. She picked one with a simple, cheerful design, and after a moment of thought, she scribbled a note inside. "You are not alone. Merry Christmas." By the time she returned, the man was still there, his shoulders slightly more slumped. She approached quietly and held out the coffee. "Here, this is for you." His eyes widened. He reached out with trembling hands. "You came back." Lena smiled. "Of course. I thought you might like something warm. And a little message." She placed the pastry and the card on the bench beside him. He opened the card, and his lips quivered. "No one's done something like this for me in a long time," he whispered. Lena sat again. "No one should be alone today. If you want, you could spend Christmas at my place. It's small, but I'd love the company." He blinked, unsure. "You've done so much already. I couldn't impose." "You're not imposing," she said with a warm smile. "Please." And so, together they walked through the quiet streets of Willow Creek, back to her tiny apartment. Lena's home was modest. The couch was threadbare, and the Christmas lights blinked unevenly across a small artificial tree. but the space was clean, cared for, and filled with warmth. The man paused by the tree and gently adjusted a light that had slipped. For the first time in hours, he smiled. "Make yourself comfortable," Lena said. "Dinner's simple, but it's warm." He sat in the old armchair as she moved into the kitchen. As he looked around, his eyes fell on a small pile of envelopes on the side table. One had past due stamped in red. His heart sank. She was struggling, and yet she had still chosen to help him. She returned with 2 bowls of tomato soup and sweet potato casserole. "Not fancy," she said, "but it's festive." He accepted the bowl, his eyes moist. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to," Lena replied. Kindness shouldn't come with a price. They ate quietly, warmth growing not just from the food, but from the connection forming between them. After the meal, the man set down his bowl. "You've been so kind, even while you're clearly going through a lot." Lena hesitated. "It's been hard. I lost my job a few months ago. I tried to stand up against some shady practices at work, and they let me go, refused to pay me what they owed. I've been scraping by with freelance gigs since." He looked at her, deeply moved. "You spoke up for what was right. That takes courage." Lena gave a tired smile. "I thought about taking legal action, but I just couldn't. Not alone." He didn't respond right away, just nodded. Then, with a meaningful look, he said, "Sometimes help shows up when you least expect it." Lena didn't understand what he meant. She assumed it was just gratitude. He stood and thanked her again before quietly leaving into the night. She returned to her desk, diving back into freelance work, unaware that her entire life was about to change. An hour had passed since the elderly man left. Lena was at her desk, typing away on a client project, when a knock startled her. It was late. She wasn't expecting anyone. She hesitated, cautious, then slowly opened the door. Standing outside were 4 well-dressed individuals, each holding folders and looking distinctly professional. Behind them, with that same soft smile as before, stood the elderly man. "Good evening, Lena," he said warmly. "I hope I'm not intruding. I wanted to see you again." Lena blinked, confused. "What's going on?" He stepped forward and handed her a wrapped envelope. "This is for you. You helped me when you didn't have to. And now it's my turn." She slowly opened the envelope and gasped. Inside was a check. A large check. Enough to pay off every bill she had and more. Her hand shook. I can't accept this. This is too much." "Please," he said. "This isn't just a gift. It's support. And not just financial. These," he gestured to the individuals behind him, "are my legal team. I own one of the most respected law firms in the state. They'll help you fight your case. We already looked into the company. What they did to you is not only unethical, it's illegal." Lena stared in disbelief. The man who had seemed broken and alone was actually someone powerful, someone with influence, someone who had chosen to repay kindness with justice. "You don't have to fight alone anymore," he said. Tears welled in her eyes. The burden she had carried for months suddenly felt lighter. Months later, Lena stood outside the courthouse. The case had been won. Her former employer had been forced to pay every penny they owed. More than the money, it was the validation, the justice, and the strength she had rediscovered that mattered. And it all started with a cup of coffee and a card. She looked across the street where the elderly man waited, smiling. She crossed over, and they embraced. "Thank you," she whispered. "No," he said gently. "Thank you. You reminded me what kindness feels like." In the end, Lena's story wasn't just about struggle. It was about how even the smallest act of compassion can lead to something far greater. How giving without expecting can spark a comeback that changes everything. This is Comeback Tales, and this was Lena's Christmas kindness.